Good morning, committee members. We certainly have a full house. Bienvenue, tout le monde. Has advised me that we do have a quorum. I will expect everybody will be appropriately designated to where they're supposed to be, because we have multiple members in the House. With that, those appearing online have been sound tested. Those that will be participating have been cleared that they're fine. Before we begin, I want to remind all members appearing today is to follow the procedure of only using the black headset. Keep it away from the microphone at the appropriate location to prevent hearing damage to the interpreters, and keep it face down. Today our meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. As you know, this is meeting number 113 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills, Social Development, and the Status of Persons with Disability. For those appearing virtually, as well as in the room, you have the choice of speaking in the official language of your choice. Interpretation services is available in the room using your headset. Virtually, please click on the globe icon at the bottom of your surface and choose the official language of your choice. If there's an interruption in translation services, please raise your hand and I will suspend while it is being clarified. As well, I want to remind all members, please direct your questions and comments through I, the chair, and wait until I recognize you by name. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on February 26, 2024, the committee is commencing its study of the subject matter of Supplementary Estimate C for 2023-2024 and the main estimates for 2024-2025. I would like to welcome our witness, Minister Sean Fraser. Welcome, Mr. Minister. Attending with the Minister is Nadine LeBlanc, Interim Chief Financial Officer and Senior Vice President Policy, as well as Kelly Gillis, Deputy Minister, Office of Infrastructure, Canada.
How many scandals do you think Trudeau has had? I have another video over here showing how many, and it is a lot. And I think shame needs to be brought back into Canada because he has no shame anymore. And I think it just trickles down to everyone underneath him. And that's what's really frustrating about Trudeau. And as far as an election is concerned, obviously there should have been one a year ago. But do you think it'll really be in October 2025? Because his steam, like all he has to do is smile and for the camera, go on his vacations. There's going to be a new love in his life coming up, probably, because he has to, because he needs to take attention away from himself. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think. Let's go back to the video.
Mr. Minister, you have 5 minutes to make opening comments, and then we will open the floor to questions. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair, dear colleagues, for inviting me here to discuss the very important issues.
To discuss the estimates, although I understand there is a study on housing that the committee has undertaken, and of course we've recently released a national housing plan, and I'm happy to take questions on whichever of those issues you may deem appropriate. I'll spend a few moments going over the bones of the recent released housing plan to give you an idea of where we're coming from and what we're trying to achieve. There's 3 main things that the housing plan seeks to accomplish. The first is to build more homes. The second is to make it easier to rent or to buy a home in this country. And the third is to ensure that those who cannot afford a home nevertheless have a roof over their head. Some of these measures will have a shorter-term impact. Others will take time to fully mature to realize the potential that we have as a country to solve the national housing crisis. Under the first pillar, to build more homes, there's a few key things we're seeking to do. The first is to reduce the cost of home building through a series of different measures, including tax measures such as the GST rebate, the changes to the capital cost allowance to allow it on an accelerated basis. But we're also moving forward with low-cost financing programs, such as the Apartment Construction Loan Program, as well as an opportunity to partner directly with provincial governments through bilateral deals through what we have called called the Canada Builds program. We're not limiting the low-cost financing to large institutional builders and are launching a program that's designed to help individual homeowners add accessory dwelling units with a low-cost loan to help them with the startup costs. In addition, there's a major opportunity to reduce the input costs of home construction by leveraging public lands. We are seeking to do something different by maintaining ownership of public lands and entering into long-term leases, which will protect the public interest in public lands. At the same time, we have an opportunity to further reduce the costs, both of construction and potentially for the person who lives in the homes that will be constructed at the end of the day. It's not enough, though, to reduce the cost of home building. We have to make it easier. We're working with different municipalities across Canada to help change their zoning and permitting practices through the Housing Accelerator Fund. We've got other different tools that we're using to negotiate improvements to the way that homes are built, including by addressing things like development cost charges through our infrastructure funding that supports housing enabling infrastructure such as water and wastewater. Similarly, we'll be negotiating deals with major metro regions across Canada to improve density near transit stations through our transit infrastructure funding. But even if we have a perfect suite of policies on cost reduction and on municipal zoning reform, we're going to run into another bottleneck, and that's the capacity of the Canadian economy to actually produce the homes we need. We intend to address this through a series of measures, including training supports for Canadian workers, including targeted immigration programs, and of course incentivizing the scale-up of home manufacturing facilities, building more homes and factories. We intend to do this by creating a pipeline of demand for the businesses that will be able to produce homes and factories, and by creating specific incentives to help with their scale-up. The second pillar of the fund is designed to help make it easier to rent or to buy a home in Canada. There's a series of measures to help protect renters, such as the Renters' Bill of Rights, which will require cooperation with provinces. But we also want to ensure that we have an opportunity for people to transition to home ownership if they choose. We intend to do this in a few key ways. The first is to help renters establish a credit score for those who face that as a particular bottleneck by allowing them to use their rental history to establish credit. But a bigger stumbling block for more people trying to get in the market is saving up for a down payment. We want to help by creating a tax-free opportunity for people to save money for that down payment, including through the adoption of the First Home Savings Account, which now has more than 750,000 Canadians that have signed up, and changes to the RRSP Home Buyers Plan that will make it easier for people to take advantage of a tax-free opportunity by scaling up the amount that they can put toward their home and extending the grace period during which they do not need to make repayments. We also want to help by reducing the monthly mortgage payment, and we've started by increasing the amortization period for new builds from 25 to 30 years, which will have a positive impact on the monthly bottom line for someone who enters into a mortgage over a longer term. This is a particularly useful opportunity for a younger first-time home buyer who will still be in their working life at the time the mortgage has completed. There's other measures that we want to move forward with to help free up stock that already exists, including measures targeting short-term rentals, including attacking the issue of mortgage fraud and a series of other measures. But it's not enough to simply deal with the housing market. We have to improve things for non-market housing in this country. Canada has about 4% of the homes in our country exist outside of the market. The OECD average is about 8%. We need to do better. We are scaling up the investments in affordable housing for low-income families, including not just support for new builds, but an acquisition fund that will help more organically affordable housing that exists in the market be transferred to nonprofit actors so they are maintained at a level of affordability forever. There's additional funding to support communities who are seeking to support those who do not have a place to live through the Reaching Home program, and additional supports to help communities who are struggling with encampments to help transition people to durable housing solutions. Mr. Chair, there's much more to share, but I see that I'm out of time and happy to take what questions my colleagues may have. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. We'll now begin with Mr. Aitchison for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here. Appreciate it. I'll get right into it. I wonder if you would agree that development charges, which you mentioned in your opening remarks, actually make houses more expensive, make homes more expensive. It's a tax.
I do.
Okay. The Housing Accelerator Fund, which I know is a signature policy of the government, is a $4 billion fund designed to speed up home approvals and get more homes built. there anything in those agreements within those cities about development charges and cities that increase development charges at the same time as receiving federal dollars?
The development cost charges that we seek to address are dealt with through the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund, not through the Housing Accelerator Fund. So in order to access the infrastructure supports, you won't be able to increase your development cost charges. That said, just a bit of nuance on the Housing Accelerator Fund. It's an outcomes-based program. We both get measures that you agree to implement, but you also have to produce the permits. So to the extent a community increases development cost charges, to a degree that doesn't allow them to meet the milestones baked into the agreement, they would jeopardize their funding under the agreement.
So you would agree, though, that the housing crisis we have in this country is not just a supply crisis, but it's an affordability crisis?
Yes, certainly.
And so I guess my question would be then, why wouldn't this Housing Accelerator Fund also, include some kind of language in these agreements, which we've still yet to see, about the cost at the local level?
Look, it's an interesting question. We want to have the right tool for each job. The Housing Accelerator Fund was targeting specific changes we wanted to see made around municipal zoning reform and the process of permitting so we could build faster. I agree with you that development cost charges create a real challenge on affordability. And what we're saying with the infrastructure programs we're putting in place, if you're going to benefit from federal money for the infrastructure, you can't also be increasing your development cost charges that goes towards building that infrastructure. So we've chosen unique tools for each of the problems that we're trying to solve for. And the Housing Accelerator Fund, in my view, is having a tremendously positive impact, but we're tackling the development cost charge issue through a different federal program.
Let's take Ottawa, for example. They just proposed to increase their development charges by almost 30%. They've backed off a little bit. It's only going to go 11%. The notion that they're going up at all anywhere in the country is absolutely mind-boggling in an affordability crisis. These accelerator funds are not paid out all at once. They're paid out in quarterly payments. And from reading the staff reports of some of these, and we haven't seen the agreements, but reading the staff reports, it would appear as though you and your office have final say on whether they get their next payments and whether they, get each quarter. So Ottawa's already received $44 million, I guess. The next chunk will be another $44 million. Would you be prepared to, address Ottawa or any of these other cities that have received or, recipients of this money to say, we need to focus on affordability as well and prorate the next payment or even not make the next payment if they keep increasing development charges?
We would need, because development cost charges are being dealt with through a different fund, we would need to see them fail to meet their obligations under the binding agreement that we have with each city. In this case, if they increase development cost charges to...
I know math is not the Conservative Party of Canada's forte.
And the budget will balance itself.
So,
degree where it impacted the permit milestones that they've agreed to achieve, then certainly we would withhold funds. No permits, no money. That's my approach to some of these conversations. However, if they increase the development cost charges, still implement the zoning reforms, continue to speed up the process of permitting and actually get the permits out the door, we're not saying we're not going to touch the development charge issue. We're saying we're going to use a different fund to tackle the development charge issue. So if they fail to produce the permits as a result of those changes they make, they would jeopardize their funding.
Minister, here's my question, I guess. In an affordability crisis, I don't know why you wouldn't use all your funds to attack the affordability issue, to attack this. I mean, nobody makes more money on housing than governments. The average across the country is about 33% per unit. And I don't know how big your infrastructure fund is, but, your accelerator fund of $4 billion, why wouldn't you use that fund too?
Well, look, it's interesting, and Scott, as you know, I've got an immense respect for you as you're one of my favorite colleagues on the other side of the aisle. I'd invite you to have this conversation with your leader.
Some of my colleagues are offended by that, I think.
And I like all of them. But truth be told, it's curious that I get these questions from the Conservative side when there's no such plan, releasing your housing plan that actually attacks the development cost charge issue. You were mayor in Huntsville, and you had a modest increase in development cost charges at the time as well.
I used to fight development charge increases all the time as a municipal mayor, and we gave land away, and we waived fees and charges.
And we're seeking to address the cost through a number of different measures. We can't just deal with it through one fund. We have to pull a number of different levers. We're trying to deal with it by reducing taxes, by putting low-cost financing programs forward, by putting public land on the table that we're going to be able to use to reduce the development costs by not selling it off to the highest bidder. On the Housing Accelerator Fund, we wanted to have a targeted approach to tackle very specific problems around municipal zoning, around the time for permitting. We do want to address the development
Can I
cost charge
cut you off
issue.
there then and ask you another question about, do you think it's working then? If cities are increasing their development charges so much? The City of Toronto just increased them 20%. In the City of Vaughan, it's $153,000.
So the development cost charge issue through the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund is a fund that we've just funded through the federal budget. If cities have made these increases, we put the date at April 2nd. If they don't abide by a freeze as of that date, they're going to jeopardize their eligibility to tap into these funds going forward. Separately, I do think the Housing Accelerator Fund has been effective, and we're starting to see in some of the cities that have had deals actually increase the rate of issuing permits. It's too early to tell the specific degree to which this is going to pan out, but the projections over the next decade from cities, not from the federal government, indicate a projected increase of 750,000 building permits over and above what was scheduled to be the case.
And we're out of time.
Thank you, Mr. Aitchison. Mr. Collins for 6 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and Minister, welcome. I'm going to pick up on where Mr. Aitchison left off in terms of the Accelerator Fund. The Leader of the Opposition was in Hamilton last week, and as part of his Make Canada Great Again tour, and he went down the nonsensical path of talking about gatekeepers and demonizing municipal councillors, municipal mayors, over the whole issue of their efforts to block housing development. And anyone who served for one budget cycle around a municipal council, and we have, I think, 3 mayors in attendance here today, a couple of former city councillors, knows that new assessment is the lifeblood of a municipality. It pays for the existing services and helps pay for new services that a municipality wants to provide. So it is counterintuitive for municipalities to block any kind of development, whether it's residential, commercial, or industrial. So this whole narrative in terms of gatekeepers and municipalities blocking and preventing us from building new housing supply is nonsensical. We, as part of the 2024 budget, topped up the Accelerator Fund to get at the whole issue of new housing supply and incenting changes at the municipal level. And there are a number of municipalities, Minister, as you know, who want to take part in that program. Langley is one of them. Sudbury, our colleague, is fighting hard to ensure her municipality gets her fair share. Can you share with the committee why it is important to work with municipalities rather than demonizing them for their efforts in terms of trying to build new assessment in their municipalities?
Look, certainly, and some municipalities are better than others. And my sense is no one that I've met who serves on a municipal council says that they want to block housing. But you do see some of the attitudes that are reflected in certain districts at a given council table reveal themselves to be in an anti-housing position because they don't want to have an apartment in the community where they live. But my experience with the Housing Accelerator Fund has been illuminating because it's demonstrated to me that communities across Canada want to embrace the growth opportunity, but it comes with certain challenges. And having a federal incentive on the table makes it easier for them to address those challenges. What I was blown away by when we published the list of best practices that had emerged through the early applications that we assessed through the Housing Accelerator Fund was the degree to which communities were willing to increase their ambition when it came to doing the things that we know will produce more houses, including adopting 4 units as of right zoning, more density near public secondary, post-secondary institutions and transit stations, digital permitting processes that'll speed up the process. We started getting letters and phone calls from municipalities saying, what more can we do in order to give ourselves a chance to succeed in the Housing Accelerator Fund? And the cream rose to the top. There are other good applications from some of the communities that you've mentioned that may not have qualified because so many of the competitor communities decided we want to do even more. We have a $400 million top-up in the recent federal budget that's going to allow us to partner with additional municipalities, and we're going to work with those most ambitious cities. So from my perspective, although I have gotten in a few disagreements with municipalities across the country, overwhelmingly, my experience has been one of willing partners who want to do more, but need help. We need to have different levels of government pulling in the same direction. And I find, although you may find yourself in a disagreement once in a while, if you don't have the conversation or you shut down the possibility of the conversation at the outset, you miss out on an opportunity to make a meaningful difference.
I'll continue on the theme of working with other levels of government. I think we're all in agreement that it takes all 3 levels of government to get us out of the housing crisis. And I want to speak to the issue that you referenced earlier in terms of our relationship with the provinces. We have a reluctant partner in the province of Ontario. There are no affordable housing programs. In fact, there is no plan The only part of the province's plan that's worked out, housing plan that's worked out, is a very successful Stag and Doe, as you know. And I would say that it's pretty hard to create funds like the Encampment Fund, like Canada Builds, like the Infrastructure Fund. They recently defaulted on their bilateral agreement with us. So can I ask, what is the plan in terms of dealing with a problem like Premier Ford in the province of Ontario when they've shown over the last number of years that they're really not interested in assisting?
So, look, thanks for the question. I'm not here to demonize partners at any level of government. I want to find a way to work with them. I don't want to be engaged in public spats with people that we need to work with. But at the same time, I have a responsibility to use the authorities that have invested in me in a manner that Canadians would see as responsible. I actually think with Ontario, we have a unique opportunity to partner through the Canada Builds program. I think sincerely they want to build more homes. We have different perspectives when it comes to putting money behind affordable housing projects in some instances, which led to the default that you mentioned on the National Housing Strategy bilateral agreement. We initially saw a plan put forward that only demonstrated they would achieve 6% of the target that they'd agreed to. They went back to the drawing board, got to 28%. We offered a conditional acceptance on the basis that they would have to provide details on how they would achieve the target they agreed to, and that was a bridge too far for now. But we remain engaged with them, and I hope to find solutions. We're going to make sure that the money that we've budgeted for affordable housing in Ontario supports affordable housing in Ontario. Whether we do that in partnership with the province will depend on their willingness to come to the table as well. I like all of the people involved at a personal level. I want to work with them to find solutions. I think we have unique opportunities because it's not just the bilateral agreement. It's working with the province for infrastructure funding opportunities, for low-cost financing programs, for transit solutions. We can't dismiss partners at any level of government. We have to work together. But my hope and expectation is when we step up and put money on the table in an area that's traditionally been viewed as the responsibility of the provinces, we're saying we want to lead, we want to be a partner, but a true partnership involves more than one party.
Madame Chabot pour 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister. And thanks to the witnesses for your attendance to discuss this important issue, housing in society and the right to housing. Housing is a right. Let's not forget this. Minister, thank you for not demonizing provinces or cities. It's quite spectacular what we can experience here and in various announcements made by governments. We feel that elections are in the air, so housing announcements are being made more and more frequently. But in the announcements that you've made, which were sequential, following each other day by day, is this a confession of failure of your national housing strategy that your government implemented? Thank you for the question. No, I don't agree with your point of view. I believe that the national strategy has exceeded its objective. For example, nearly 500,000 units benefited from the national housing strategy. That's higher than the target for affordable housing units. For end of 2023, the target was 20,000 units.
I know math is not the Conservative Party of Canada's forte.
And the budget will balance itself.
So,
and the result is over 150,000. But in reality, I need to increase the effort because things have changed.
Challenges we were facing.
Je pense que j'ai un bon résumé de votre réponse.
Well, I think this is a good summary of your answer. I have other questions, if you don't mind. You're familiar with the situation in Quebec. You know that in Quebec, We are a nation with its own programs with an ecosystem, so as to implement affordable housing and social housing measures. In Quebec, this is the only area where we have projects. In your, you were saying that social housing only has 4% investment versus 8%. In the money that you are going to be implementing, what share is going to be attributed to Quebec? And are you prepared to pay this sum directly to Quebec so that Quebec can implement projects? Thank you. Normally, the proportion of funding for Quebec reflects Quebec's population. There's an example. I think there's an opportunity to address a fair share for Quebec in existing programs. It's different in commercial programs.
And is Chrystia Freeland doing a good job? She is the finance minister and the vice president of Canada. And she is the one that just looks like her head is just spinning when she talks. It's always like trying to drag it on, never answer a question. And maybe they should have this I thought they would always do this. When they ask a question, say, do you mind after you finish it, if you give me 5 seconds to say if you answered it or not for our listeners? Because it is so frustrating. Everything is an infomercial with both of them. And that's something that I think needs to be stopped. Maybe the whole Constitution and the human rights and everything needs to be rewritten again after those two are gone, because this is just frustrating what they're doing. Anyway, let's go back to the video.